Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of the Business of Higher Ed podcast brought to you by the Fox Education. My name is David Fox. International education, we know, is under extreme pressure. Uh, we can say in Canada, but in other countries as well. We've got aggressive federal immigration reform, we've got growing public scrutiny. Um, we've got institutions struggling to balance mission, revenue, and responsibility, amongst others. At the same time, while the federal government controls immigration policy, provinces remain responsible for funding post secondary institutions. That structural disconnect has created real constraints for colleges and universities attempting to make reform. Today's conversation is not about growth at any cost. Today, it's about what happens when institutions try to uphold ethical recruitment and student access within a system where policy levers and financial responsibility don't always align. We'll explore how transparency, accountability, and academic integrity can act as powerful filters that align institutions with genuinely engaged students, strengthen public trust, and improve long-term outcomes both for the students and the communities in which these institutions operate. And to help us understand all that is our guest today, Christiaan Barnard, who is the executive director of Camosun International, part of Camosun College, in Victoria, British Columbia. So we're also getting a West Coast, Western Canadian perspective on the podcast today. He brings 30 years of dedicated experience to international students and international education. He has built and led systems grounded in integrity, transparency, long-term sustainability, believing that how institutions recruit, assess, and support students ultimately determines whether international education fulfills its promise, or does it undermine public trust. Christiaan's career was shaped by a defining earlier experience, which was witnessing how a single study abroad opportunity could transform a student's life. That moment set him on a path focused not on shortcuts or on volume, but on building systems that endure, systems that respect educational diversity, protect institutional integrity, and set students up to position themselves to succeed. His professional philosophy emphasizes steady effort, ethical choices, and investing for the long term. And as he would put it, the future isn't built overnight. It's built by those willing to put in the work with integrity and purpose, however long it takes. So, Mr. Barnard, welcome to the podcast. We're thrilled to have you here.
Yeah, thank you, David. That was a great introduction. I appreciate it.
So we're going to move through some themes to try to organize at least my thoughts in terms of this subject. So let's start out with, you talk about and referred to ethical recruitment.
Sure.
And importantly, ethical recruitment under structural pressure, right? So when the federal immigration reform tightens access, but provincial funding models remain unchanged, how does that pressure institutions' recruitment decisions?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, and that is a very difficult thing to manage. So I know for my colleagues in Ontario, when the Ontario government froze domestic tuition and then rolled it back 10%, put a lot of pressure on them to find other ways to generate revenue. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, they did really well at that. But then as you build those systems, at first they work really well, and then sometimes they get away from you. So I think for many of us, we tried to see where can we build these systems and not so that they don't get away from us, and they continue to recruit genuine students that'll be successful, that'll be retained, and then they will graduate from your institution and they'll have a lot of good things to say. And for a place like Camosun, we're not a big institution. Uh, our maximum capacity for international students is about 20% of our total enrollment. So we're not in a situation where we need to drive more the maximum amount of enrollment that some of the institutions of Ontario have to. So we did, as a caveat, we do have a few things going for us that allows us to build systems that have a lot of integrity built into them to focus on genuine students rather than just trying to bring in as many students as possible.
See. So what are the non-negotiable pillars of ethical international recruitment, and which ones are hardest to protect in the current policy environment?
Absolutely. Well, number one would be line of sight. Always having that line of sight with the student and being able to connect with them and for them to be able to connect with you at any single moment of the process or their family members. So without that, it's very hard to ensure that they're getting correct information, they have access to the professionals or to somebody that can give them explain what the real experience is going to be like. And I've always believed that if a student knows all the information, they'll make a good choice, and that choice will also be good for the institution. So that's the hardest. And where it becomes difficult is our industry and Camosun as well. We work with education consultants around the world. Ensuring that they're working with integrity and that things aren't falling off the side of their desks or getting manipulated sometimes, that is very, very challenging. But again, you can create systems to manage that. It won't always be perfect, but you can build systems to get pretty darn close to perfection to ensure that things don't fall off their desks or that you don't end up working with somebody who's unethical.
And just for our viewers, can you just briefly outline what is that structure that is in place for many schools, not all schools, in terms of international recruitment? The
Sure.
sort of typical structure.
Yeah, so I'll speak for the public sector because I'm not
Yeah.
super familiar with the private sector. But for the public sector, many of us will have our own recruiters that will engage with education institutions overseas, high schools, universities. They'll also attend education-specific events in other countries. We do our own virtual events through social media, where we connect with students in certain countries to provide them with information. There's also a large industry of education consultants, some people call them agents, around the world that we connect with and many others connect with it as well. And if you can think of the old travel agent industry, where people would go to a travel agent to find out what hotel rooms are available in which countries, flights and everything, the education consultant industry is similar to that, but they're helping students with what programs, where are those programs located, career choice, helping them with their career choice and providing them information so that hopefully they can make a very informed decision on where they want to study, which country, what province, what city in the case of Canada, and what program.
All right. So how should institutional leaders think about ethics when financial sustainability and policy constraints may pull in different directions?
Well, they've got to keep their thumb on ethics, because once you let that go, everything will start going. So they really need to focus on that, and I strongly believe if they keep the focus on making sure that they're doing what's right for the students ethically, they will be successful. It's when systems get out of control, and that isn't the main criteria, that I think things can start going sideways. Reputation of the institution will be harmed, make it more difficult to recruit students.
Mm-hmm.
Reputation of the country is harmed, which makes it difficult for all of us to recruit more students. So keeping an eye on ethics and building systems that recruit genuine students, will benefit every institution. It's harder, it takes more work, it takes more effort. There's no quick fixes, but in the long run, it's about managing risk as well. If you do that, you'll have a lot less risk of big gains and then huge crashes like we're seeing right now.
Yeah, so that kind of leads into our second theme, which is transparency as a filter, but not as a barrier. So, how do clear published admission standards shape the applicant pool before an application is submitted, especially in a climate of shifting immigration policy?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, institutions just have to stay true to whatever their admission policy is and practices. And it's not possible to be 100% clear, but you can post the main, most important ones, like your English requirement, your GPA requirement. Those things can be posted with the understanding that depending on which education system you come from, there may be some differences in that because they're not every education of the 500 different plus jurisdictions around the world.
Mm-hmm.
There's no exact equivalency, so institutions
Right.
have to figure out what that is. So being very clear with the information, clear with what you're looking at, and also just clear with what the expectations are. That it's going to be tough. It's for an international student, it's very likely going to be the toughest journey of their life. So don't sugarcoat it. And if you don't, then you're going to get those students that are they're up to the challenge, and they'll arrive on campus ready to go. And you can't ask for a better student. Someone that engages in everything they do while they're on campus is great for the community, great for other students, and great for the organization.
Yeah. So, transparency is key. Do transparency requirements, or can they scare students away, or or maybe or they attract those who value fairness and clarity?
Yeah. Uh, I always believe they attract the best students. The best students want that. That's, they're smart and they know that by focusing on that, they're going to get what they're looking for. And transparency, just to go back a little, it isn't about grades or English level. It's also about the institution being accountable to that and giving opportunities for students to engage with others to make sure and verify the information. We've all heard trust but verify, that famous quote. And so, yeah, students will come to us with a lot of trust, but we need to give them the option to verify everything we say, and everything we've posted on our website they should be able to read something and go, okay, well, I'm going to talk to another student and find out if that's true, so that they know it's just not hype.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, what then? I guess the other side of it is what happens when institutions rely on ambiguity in recruitment, both for students and for international trust. You've already touched on this, but do we have some more insights into, what some specific types of examples of what can happen?
Yeah, well, I think we're seeing that right now with institutions really struggling because there's so much change going on, and keeping up to all that change makes it very difficult. And so we're seeing institutions struggle with that, and it's reflected in a lot of the study permit approval rates, I believe. When they're struggling and they haven't had the chance to start to make that transition to different practices that will get clear information to the students to help students identify whether or not they're going to be successful if they apply for a study permit or be successful in a program that the institution offers.
So then moving on to credential verification, institutional integrity.
Absolutely.
Camosun has reported fewer than 6 fraudulent applications in nearly a decade. How does this reflect on system design and institutional integrity?
Yeah. So from where I worked previous to Camosun, we built a lot of system integrity. One of my responsibilities there was to build in system integrity. And so carried it over to Camosun, and then we also improved it, learned from mistakes. And so building it right into the processes at the very initial meeting with the student that, hey, by the way, um, here's our refund policy. Make sure you notice that there's a clause for fraud that's been vetted by our lawyers. uh, there's if you submit any fraudulent documents, if IRCC determined refuses you based on fraud, you'll get zero refund of your entire deposit. Well, that alone has, I think, turned away anybody who is thinking of doing something dubious, including any agent that focuses on that type of work simply would not come to Camosun to work with us. So that alone was, I think, the biggest step. And then making sure that all documents students can submit notarized copies to us for admission, but they have to bring the original. And the original, we check it within the first 2 weeks of the student starting here. If they don't match, well, again, goes back to the student has just lost their entire deposit, and we take a $10,000 deposit minimum. Now, for many of our programs, it's the full year's tuition. So that's a pretty big
Yes.
incentive for students not to commit fraud or anybody who works with us.
Right. Now, a lot of so the ethics, the integrity, the credential verification, this all I think most people in post-secondary education, I think most people would say yes,
Yeah.
we're all for that, we agree with that, and I do think that for the most part they do a good job. I mean, there are stories we hear and see in the news at times, but the flip side of that is that the concern from an institutional perspective about slowing recruitment.
Mhm.
Um, what, in your opinion, do institutions who worry rigorous verification will slow recruitment? What, in your opinion, are they misunderstanding about that trade-off?
Sure. This could probably be answered by our recruitment partners around the world, who often say we have the fastest um, processes of
Oh,
maybe in the top five of who they work with. So
really?
generally, from the time we receive an application, we can generally provide an answer that we're either going to admit the student, need more documentation, or they don't meet the criteria for the program or for the institution,
Mm-hmm.
usually within 48 to 72 business hours.
That's it.
So, or 2 to 3
Yeah.
business days.
Right.
Um, it's just building the system to ensure that we train everybody that if a student wants to apply, we will pre-vet their application free of charge.
Oh,
So we have all of our regional managers. We have regional managers around the world and on campus. Um, they will receive the application. They will pre-vet it to make sure everything is there before it goes into the admission system. So that's one way. So it's more work up front, but then we're not processing, say, 10,000 applications and only having 1,000 genuine students. We're processing pretty close to the exact number of students who will go through the full process and become a student at Camosun. There's only about I think 20 to 30% difference from the application going into the system to the student arriving on campus. So very high conversion rate because we do a lot of upfront work, takes more effort, but in the end it takes less people because every application is genuine. And that's also part of our vetting process of the student. When they're coming in, the regional manager goes, okay, there's something a little strange here. I need more information. Maybe it's just strange because it's a misunderstanding, or maybe there's something else going on. And they have a lot of autonomy to reach out, find out. Essentially, some listeners may not like this phrasing, but they have to eat what they kill. So if there's a problem, it comes back to them, like what happened, what went on. So they're very professional. They work hard to ensure that they're doing the best for the organization. It's not fire and forget. And I think that's what's starting to be missed in this whole part, or the whole cycle of recruitment, is many institutions, to get that higher volume, their recruiters just, their goal is just as many applications as possible and let someone else sort it out. But again, they're losing that line of sight, and they're also losing that connection with the partner that's helping recruit, and that relationship with the partner that's helping recruit. And so you don't have that great relationship with the recruitment partner. It also leads to less students, less genuine students, and a lack. If the institution doesn't care, why should the recruitment partner care if the student is genuine or not? If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. So I would assume then if you're first of all, congratulations on that conversion rate, and that not just on the conversion rate, but the process. That's certainly going to be welcomed by students. If I get everything in, you know, 3 business days, let's say even 4 business days. Um, the How do you go about though? So it sounds like the consultants that are out there, that relationship is really, really key.
Yeah.
And how an institution frames that, correct me if I'm going off it here, how they frame, this is what we do. It's that's a really important thing. So what are some things that you do to build that kind of relationship, to really build, like you talked about, the regional managers having a lot of responsibility, have a lot
Yeah.
of authority.
Yeah.
um, uh, how do you grow that? How do you build that, reinforce it in a time when, again, a lot of people are looking at other schools as competitors, and maybe sometimes they are, maybe sometimes they're not, but for many students, right, for many students it's about going to the right place, and it's for many schools it's about the right students,
Yeah.
as you said earlier. So how do you or some examples of how those agents, those consultants, those regional, how you strengthen and continue to grow that very that transparency, the ethics, they're not employees, right? So they're like consultants. So they're their own business, right? So
Absolutely.
how do
Yeah.
you, yeah.
Yeah. So, if funny enough, genuine recruitment partners and genuine students, pretty much the same. Just be very transparent, set the expectation, work with them on the expectations that you have, and you you one, have a great relationship, and it's a successful relationship. So that's the key to having our regional managers who do the recruitment working with each of those education consultants, so that they can help them understand what the expectations are. Good agents have no problem with high expectations. In fact, they welcome it, because they're like, meet this expectation, and look at all our students are getting study permits. Yeah, they're okay with high bars, because it converts. It means those students are going to likely convert. They're going to have everything done in a very professional, at a very high level of integrity, and lots of expectations aren't something to run away from. Best agents in the world actually like to work with institutions with very high expectations, because it makes their job easier when they know exactly what the student needs to submit to get that admission and to get a study permit.
Right.
So it's yeah, it's interesting that in the industry I've seen a lot of institutions go, well, yeah, that don't put so much effort or expectations on the agent, they won't want to work with you. Well, if that's the criteria for the agent not to want to work with you, then they're probably not the right, they're not an education consultant. They are an agent. And there's a big difference between the two, actually.
Okay. All right. So then, accurate placement,
Mhm.
placement, and student success. Why is accurate placement one of the most overlooked aspects of
Absolutely.
ethical recruitment?
Yeah. If the student is set up for failure before they even arrive, because whatever their education equivalency is to what we require for students, or the average for students to be successful in the program, if that's misaligned, then the students already failed. It's really tough to meet a much higher standard if you think it's here. And then suddenly you arrive and, oh, actually, I needed to be up here to really do well in this program, to flourish. So we've spent a lot of time, and as I said a little bit earlier, there's like 500 different possible um, education systems that we could admit students to from. So we don't have it all, and that's where that transparency and admission can sometimes be murky, because sometimes we have to go like, okay, well, just hang on a second, let us do some research, figure out where the equivalencies are. And a lot of time it benefits both the institution and the student. So when we look at South America, where a student with, you know, most of the, if you see a student with a 65% graduation, uh, high school graduation, they're a star student. You very rarely see students like, you don't see the 95 or the close to 100% that you see in other national education systems or other countries. Uh, they will come and they will be an A+ student here, even if they have 51% there. And for many of them, our first year math, university math and physics, they're like, oh, I did that in grade 10. So figuring out where that equivalency is can really benefit both the institution and the student, because we wouldn't be able, if we hadn't done that work, we wouldn't be able to accept those students. And the really interesting part is most of the countries in South America have 11-year education system, not 12-year. And yet the students, after 11 years, significantly higher ability in physics and math and the sciences overall
Really?
than Canadian grade 12 graduates. So really important to do that. And then in other places, they they need a much higher score to come into Camosun.
Okay.
For some countries, they need a 75% minimum to get into just arts and science, because the equivalency is just, it just doesn't match on that sort of high school graduation 50-50.
So it's as part of that homework, as part of that upfront, we're not only looking at what we'll use the term consultants, what
Mm-hmm.
consultants we want to work with, but a lot of upfront and very, very, if you can call it granular, maybe not
Mm-hmm.
granular,
Yeah. It,
but a lot of different countries, a lot of different systems of education, a lot of different backgrounds, different skills that are emphasized. That's all part up front of. So theoretically, I could say to you, I'm not going to, I could give you a country and you could probably give me, if that's a country from which students sometimes come to Canada, you could give me a breakdown of, well, this is what that's how that's viewed. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we don't just look at the equivalency, we also do the research to find out, did we get it right? So a year in, how are those
Okay.
students doing?
The measurement,
Where was,
measurement and the
yeah,
follow-up.
yeah. And um, where are they doing on average as good as a Canadian student? And then go back and find out, what did we admit them with?
Okay.
And that's the criteria to admit students from that education jurisdiction, because that's where every student should be. If we're doing our homework and doing things right for students, that's the minimum they need to flourish at Camosun College, is being average on par with the Canadian students.
So statistically, and I'm not going to ask you to quote a statistic, but
Yeah,
statistically at Camosun College or Camosun University, you're, and I don't like to get into domestic, international. I think everything is international anymore, whether it's business, finance,
yeah,
medicine,
yeah.
education. I mean, it's all, there are differences, but for the purpose of just this point, so you would say that domestic students, Canadian students that have gone through, let's say, K through 12 here, um, assign a Camosun would be those students versus internationally trained students or international students. They're going to be about on the same par. So it's
If we've done our work well,
yeah, okay.
yeah. And surprisingly, a few years back, when we looked at overall averages of domestic and
Yeah,
international were slightly above the domestic. So we we did a really good job
good
there.
job.
Maybe it allowed us to look and go, okay, maybe we're being too stringent. So let's see how we're doing, because our goal is they should be doing average. It should be identical if we're doing really good work to admit them and to be sure that we're bringing them in on an equivalency to what Canadian high school students are admitted on.
Mhm. Okay. So going back, and this, you've spoken a bit about this, it flows sort of from what you just said. When we're talking about getting placement right, you've talked about the work up front. You've talked about the detail, focus, understanding the different systems, the consultants, same frame of view in terms of genuine students and creditability and institutional integrity. So I'm assuming what you would say is then statistically getting placement right, you have a higher retention rate
Absolutely.
of international students that you admit, a higher, and tell me if I'm wrong, higher completion rate of international students that you admit. Here's the question: does it impact overall student cost?
I would say it lowers student costs. If you're talking about services and recruitment costs, I'd say in the end, it lowers it because those students are much more engaged. So they'll engage in the information rather than always relying on someone to tell them what they need to know. Uh, they're more decisive. So we spend a lot less time, a lot less resources spinning our wheels with
See,
like, are they coming? Aren't they coming? Do we need to plan for them to arrive? And a higher study permit conversion rate. So uh, that alone is golden because right now it's very hard to plan with numbers declining. But if you're like, okay, at least almost 70% of our students are going to get a study permit, higher if they're going straight into one of our degree programs, it really helps with our planning. So I'd say it's absolutely worthwhile to do the work up front and then reap the benefits as the student enters and moves along.
so so yeah, so the work up front, and then uh, you know, then they're more likely to attend, they're more likely to do better. Okay, they're more likely to complete. And then even when they're attending the school, certain other services, I mean, obviously you're going to have tutoring services, you're going to have all services
Yeah.
for any students like you would anywhere, but maybe not as high a price of the types of costs that enter into. I mean, you talked about decisiveness, for example, and
Mhm.
not needing to be told what to do. And I can see how that that makes a better experience for the student. It makes a better experience for the school too.
Yeah. Yeah. The
Um,
faculty love it.
right, right, right. So the signals that the students receive when speed is prioritized over fit are is what? when speed is prioritized over fit, do students
Yeah.
or has that changed over time?
Well, it's definitely in the last 4 years. I think students, one, they just want a really quick admission. They didn't really. More and more students don't care with what they take. They're just like, I'll take anything. You tell me, what should I take? No, we can't do that. Uh,
Mhm.
it benefits high volume because it takes little effort if you're like, oh yeah, go into this. Oh, by the way, we have space in this business program, but you know you you show no background in business, but that's okay. The student's going to spend their first semester there and they're not going to flourish. Maybe they will. Maybe they'll find out they do like business, but that speed approach just to try and get as many students and to um, deal with the competitive nature of what's happening, that that's just not working. We're just not seeing it. So if institutions have to slow down, it's going to benefit them. Just take a little more time, make sure you're helping the student match with what's going to be right for them. And then I think we're also going to build more trust with IRCC. When institutions show that they're doing good work with students to ensure they're helping them choose the right program, making sure they're a genuine student, it's going to build a lot more trust with IRCC, and we're going to see much higher approval rates, and we're probably going to see an opening up of more capacity to recruit students. So I think it's now on our shoulders to build trust with IRCC that we can do good work to help the right students, genuine students, come to Canada and flourish.
Um, so when we go back to prioritizing speed over fit or fit over speed, um, you talked earlier about because you've done the upfront work, because you've really gone to ground in terms of what this country, because your consultants are you and they are on the same road. Um, So you can do sometimes 2 to 3 days, maybe 4 days, we'll say 2 to 3 days. What is what was the speed? Not I'm not saying at your institution. What was the speed when this was happening? Like like 2 to 3 days. That sounds quick. That sounds very quick. At the same time, you're talking about the work that you've done and that and therefore so are you saying 2 to 3 days and a very likely fit that's going to stay versus what might it be like in other circumstances in terms of how quickly sometimes not naming any institutions how quickly that process happens.
Yeah. Oh, it's
I
it's
mean
so
it's changed
different.
now but
Yeah, yeah. Some institutions take like up to 6 weeks, and if you take 6 weeks, then the best students who can go anywhere, they'll go somewhere else. So it's also
so
speed is important when you're dealing with the best students, because if they want your program, they're interested in your institution, and you take 6 weeks, they're they're going to lose interest usually.
but
So
that's
speed's important.
interesting though. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So speed has two parts to it. One is the top students who can go anywhere. If they've designated you as one of the places they would like to go, if you get them or communicate with them quickly, get them answers quickly, they're likely to come to you. Uh, if in other cases I see institutions, their recruiters actually give the offer right there and then. Um, I don't know if they're trained to evaluate the transcripts and everything, but I've seen less than a day. I've seen it on site, offers of admission. It makes it difficult to ensure that all the documents are real, and to really have a good conversation and understanding with the student what they're looking for. But some do it, and I think some in the past have been very successful with that model. it's so hard to say.
Yeah.
It's really hard to say. But I think if you do it right, you can do it fast. You can do it right, fast and right. You can also do it fast and wrong. So
Yeah.
which fast do you want? So
Yeah.
you just got
Yeah.
to make sure that you build things in. So if it's fast, you're doing it also doing it right
Well,
with integrity.
you make a good point, which is um, if a school is not really maybe being as going in depth with applicants or people interested, in one sense, you'd think that would happen faster, the transition, but in fact, you're saying it may not, and so I guess double check in a sense of we put the work in up front. We're and I'm assuming these patterns are always changing. They're always evolving.
Yeah,
Different
yeah,
countries, different
absolutely.
systems, different leadership. So you've got to be on this all the time. And yeah, so it's not just we're doing it quick and therefore we're doing it quickly or not doing it in the way Camosun's doing it means it's going to be quick, right? Whereas you might say, well, if we don't do that, then it's it's going to happen much more quickly. But in fact, that may not be the case, and you may not, and you may lose that student anyway.
Yeah,
Okay, all right.
yeah. I think it's all about, again, it's all about the people you have working with you,
Mm-hmm.
and they can be as quick as automated systems uh, in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not. You can enter something into AI and it spits out something, but then if the work isn't done up front, you may take that application, but you never see a student.
Okay.
So
So then we've we've talked about accurate placement, student success, verification of credentials. We've talked about understanding the educational systems in oh, so then that leads to okay, our overall theme is we're discouraging what you refer to as non-genuine applicants by design, though, not just because we take too long, not because we are too fast, but because it just it's not the right fit. So
not right now.
how not right now. Okay, that's important too. How intentionally is your recruitment process designed to discourage non-serious or misaligned applicants?
It's pretty intentional to, I wouldn't use the word discourage them, but to help educate them that this is a big investment. Like two
Mm-hmm.
years, it's a minimum of 70,000 Canadian dollars when you factor in tuition, living costs,
Mm-hmm.
everything else that goes into moving your whole life to another country and studying for 2 years. So I wouldn't say we discourage them, but we educate them like you're not ready.
Yeah.
You haven't shown that based on your what you've done in the past that
Mm-hmm.
there's a logical progression. So you're going to have to start from zero and learn everything here when you're going to be in a classmate with students that this is a logical progression.
Hmm.
So how are you going to keep up? How are you going to flourish? How are you going to do well? It's one, not the right time or not the right program. So align with something that is the right program for you and ensure that it's the
Okay.
right time that you're really going to engage because that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Take that in, take $70,000 into almost any economy in the world. You can build a pretty good business.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that, what you're saying, then let's flip the other side, which is um, you're educators, you're an educational institution, you want to help students, you want to help students find success or position themselves for success.
Yep.
You've been very clear about ethics, accurate placement. Having said that, how do you how does one manage in the sector filtering applicants, uh, but not overly restricting opportunity. So, as
Absolutely.
an example, you have a student, like you said, not now, maybe not now, maybe if you did. So, you may have a student, we'll just use one student, where you say, I can see that this student could,
Mhm.
but maybe not right now. So, how is the balance? What is the balance in terms of access, breaking down barriers, um, and filtering and discouraging non-genuine applicants?
Yeah, that's a really complex
Yeah,
process.
yeah,
It's a lot of it comes from experience. So
okay,
most of the team has a decade plus experience. So you, you get to when you're working with a student, you get to understand what their motivations are. You get to you ask the right questions, and then you find out, you start to get a picture, and you go, okay, even students that have borderline grades, you can see that they're going to flourish and they're going to do amazing just because they're engaged. They have questions. They have this excitement for what they want to do in Canada. And then you have others that just don't know. They're just like, just they'll go, oh, just put anything on my application. No, we can't do that. You have to fill out the application. Okay, tell me what I should put on the application.
mhm,
Can't do that for you. You really need to think about what do you want to do with the rest of your life, because this is a big investment,
mhm.
and start thinking about what you'd like to do and how. And then we ask some questions. And when I used to be a recruiter, I'd ask lots of questions. And then a lot of times, and this is probably, I don't know, 3 out of 5 students, they'd be a good fit for the institution I work for. 2, I know where they would flourish. And so if I'm at an event and the recruiter for that institution is there, I take them straight to that desk and say, hey, this student, this is the program they're really, really looking for. We don't offer it in the way that is going to benefit them or at all. And that used to be a pretty consistent part of the industry. Uh, I think up
I was
until
gonna
just
ask that.
recently,
I was gonna ask
we
that. Is
we
that
used to
still
always, and we still do. Like, I work with my team, and I'm like, you make sure that you know what all of our colleagues are offering, because if a student comes to us, our service is also to help that student fit with what's best for them. And that may not be Camosun, because in my experience, only 3 out of 5 students, Camosun would be the right place for them. So you need to know what each of our colleagues are doing, institutions, and like, hey, this will be better. I can't tell you how many students I've sent to colleagues. um, yeah, I wish I got commission for
right?
it.
And I was gonna ask, and again, we're not naming names, because I can see how that would happen. I come from a hockey background, right? And certain teams recruit certain players to play junior hockey, and it's like we need to have different roles on a
Yeah.
team, and so this team might not be the right team for you. But hey, I know the coach over there. Would you like me to? So has was that reciprocity? I guess if I'm using the word, that reciprocal relationship, is that more of a thing of the past? I'm not talking about your school in particular. More of a thing of the past, or do you see it coming back around again, as the idea of, again? It's not necessarily that everybody's competing for students. We're trying to find the right students, those
Yeah.
schools that are lucky enough to be able to think that way, right? So is that kind of cross referral, inter referral, is that still something that?
I, in my role now, I don't. I'm not in a position to know. I would have to speak to my recruitment and enrollment team. I would hope so. I think in BC it is. We're very collegial. We work together really closely in BC, and that probably reflects our higher study permit conversion rate here. And again, we all need students, like with what's happening right now.
Yeah.
But the wrong student isn't going to help any institution. They're either not going to get a study permit, or they're gonna arrive and they're gonna be disenchanted, and then there you blow your student service budget on trying to support that student and try and get them on the right track. So yeah, it's, you might get them in the door, but if they're not the right fit, then there's all these other repercussions all the way down the line, including repercussion to other students if they're in group work. If they're doing group work and they're not pulling their weight, then it disrupts the goals of other students, and also,
Well, or as you say, if maybe in a year or two they could more
yeah,
pull their weight.
yeah,
Yeah, I guess it's always it's a question of from uh you look at a student and maybe they're not quite there yet. It's that judgment though. It's that expertise you've got to have about understanding. Okay, I think he's this student, he or she is here. I think with what we do, they can be successful versus this other student who, maybe here, but I just don't see it, happening.
yeah,
So that expertise, that ability to read people, the ability to, I guess, really ask very particular questions, very, try to understand.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's important, and they might be here with us,
Yeah.
but another institution they'll be up here because it's a
Uh,
better fit, and that's why it's so important for the recruiters to really know what's being offered at other institutions, and then always always have that in their mind that it's okay. My job is to help the student make a good choice. It's not to put a bum in a seat at Camosun. Yes, that's important, but their job is to help the student make a good choice so that the student is successful. And if they do that, like, we're going to get referrals. They're going to say, you know what, I didn't go to Camosun, but they were awesome. They referred me to an institution where I'm super happy. It was the perfect fit. But I think you should go look at Camosun because, man, they're awesome there.
Yeah.
They were so honest. They showed so much integrity. They will tell you right away if they have a program that's a good fit for you.
Correct. All right. So moving on, a lot of institutions, right? Institutions, post-secondary institutions are they're looking at international partnerships. They're looking at just partnerships, work integrated learning partnerships, experiential learning partnerships. Maybe do a few years of school here, and then you go to this other school that you have a partnership with.
Absolutely.
Do that. So I'm assuming you're going to tell me that high recruitment standards. How do you see the high recruitment standards impacting those types of partnerships, those types of opportunities that a lot of schools, I think most schools, maybe I'm wrong, I think a lot of schools are pursuing quite aggressively.
Yeah, I think it'll just benefit everybody because for us, if we have students that are, say, doing their first 2 years at a partner somewhere overseas, we want to be sure for the longevity of that program and the success of that program that once they arrive, they're going to hit the ground running and be successful. If they're not, that partnership's not sustainable. So having really good aligned admission criteria or expectations so that when students move on to your institution that they're successful, or we do have some partnerships where they'll start at Camosun and then they'll go abroad to finish their degree. The same, we want them to be successful there because we want to be able to promote that, helps us recruit students, and then when students are successful, then that's basically our mission. We've
Well, and
achieved
they're successful. They're more likely to give back. They're more likely to
Yeah,
come back to you for upskilling, reskilling,
yeah,
DPD,
absolutely.
whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, do ethical recruitment practices become a reputational advantage over time?
I think so. Yeah. Well, with as I said, the really good education consultants, the genuine good ones, they want to work with schools that do good work with the students because many of them, their their community is what supports them, and if they have a good reputation because they work with institutions with good reputations, then they're successful. If their reputation is tarnished by our practices, then their reputation, they're going to have more difficulty in the community, being seen as an expert to support families whose children want to study abroad. So it's really important having a good reputation.
So, you know, um, we've gone through in the post secondary in Canada, in the post secondary system, just internationally generally. There have been a lot of challenges in the last. I mean, we've moved from COVID to the impacts of that in terms of application enrollment, the immigration rules, the changes there. Maybe some schools were not quite as ready, maybe. Um, and so, what reputational risks do you think, in your opinion, are hardest to recover from when institutions compromise standards over structural pressure?
Yeah, I think the idea that the institution will take anybody, that because then once that's in the mindset of potential applicants, one, you're going to get the students who no one else will take. They're like, yeah, but I can go there. So you're going to get the non-genuine students that just want to be admitted somewhere. The really genuine students is like, they're like, well, I'm not going to go there because they'll offer admission to anybody. I worked really, really hard to
Mm-hmm.
get where I am. I want to go to an institution where everybody else worked really, really hard to get where they are and were admitted there. So that's why UBC is McGill and U of T are so successful. Students have to work really, really hard to get there. Imagine if they just took everybody, then those students wouldn't want to go there. So that idea that the institution will take anybody and everybody is really damaging to the reputation. And then the second would be that they'll take anybody and any anybody and not provide the supports to at least help them be
Yeah.
successful. Once you've admitted a student, you have a responsibility to do everything you can to help them be successful. If you admitted them and they don't meet the basic, they don't have the basic skill set to be successful, then you've done a disservice to them, and that's just not ethical.
Communities now. How does international student recruitment, in your opinion, impact the communities and provinces in which the institutions are located, economically, demographically, socially, long term?
Yeah, I think the benefits outweigh all the negativity that we've been hearing in the media and from
Mhm.
various political bases. It's billions and billions of dollars in economic development for the country, and support to the communities. There's many small communities with small regional institutions that
Mhm.
they just don't have a skilled workforce without international students. There's just not enough local population to keep industry going. So from that aspect, it's devastating for those small regional colleges and those communities that really need, one, the workforce to keep industry going and to keep the services going while those students are getting higher education.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think what we're seeing right now, also when you look at housing rates and many other aspects of the economy, we see an incredible sharp decline that I don't think the federal government fully understood the impacts of international students and temporary foreign workers in the country. Vancouver just had, I think, the, 'the, the, 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 highest apartment vacancy rate in like 20 or 30 years. I
Really?
can't remember what it was. It was unbelievable. So it's like close to 3.5% vacancy rate for apartments. So that's going to impact development. That's going to impact pension funds. That's going to impact local, even in the cities, local communities that support with groceries, with restaurant meals,
Yeah.
with laundry, everything. So it's going to have a huge impact. Now, did we get out of control? Absolutely. Things got way out of control, where institutions just kept bringing in students.
Mhm.
Um, it allowed them to do some pretty amazing things. The revenue, but there has to be a governor where it's like, okay, we've gotten a little out of hand here. It's now damaging the community. So let's see, where is that happy place where international enrollment, the community, everything aligns for a positive experience. And I think that's where doing really good ethical recruitment, part of that is about what's good for the community, so that, and what's good for international students, so everything aligns, so people are comfortable, people are happy. International students have a good experience in the community. There's good opportunities for them to not lose their culture, but integrate
No,
also into
no.
Canadian culture
Yep.
and understand it. And so that's what Canada has been for so many years, a fantastic multicultural country. But when things get to extreme, then things start to break and fall apart. And I think we just got to realign. What's happening now at the federal level with cutting back international enrollment to the point that it is going to have some really serious consequences that I don't think the federal government fully understands. So I think they need to take a little more time to really understand what the impacts of their decision, not just to education, which I think is where they're focusing, but on the economy as a whole, and and every single Canadian.
Hmm.
And that might help Canadians also embrace international education a little bit more, when they understand that it's not just about seats in a classroom. It's actually much greater than that.
Yeah. Um, yeah. And so, again, making the job of, you know, ethical recruiting we're talking about, it's now we have to understand we understand the different countries, we understand the different education systems, we work, we're very deliberate about the relationships we make with the recruiters, the consultants, but then as well we've got to also understand what students work for our school and this community, and what does the community need, and so that's going to impact as well everything. So it's to really go at this, it's a big thing.
It,
It's a
it
big thing.
is. There's so many components to it. It's a Yeah. There's a lot of pieces, but that's our responsibility to figure out all those pieces and try. We're never going to get it perfect, but to
Yeah.
try our best to do it really well.
Mhm.
Well,
Moving forward, let's talk about moving forward. What would better alignment between, and again, your opinion, what would better alignment between federal immigration policy and provincial post-secondary funding look like in practice? And again, recognizing that you have
Yeah.
spent a great deal of your career in British Columbia, which may be different than other provinces, right?
Yeah. Well, that is a really good question, and there's better policy people to discuss it than I.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Funding at, for British Columbia, the funding hasn't been terrible, uh, but there has been a gap, especially right now. We're seeing that gap play out right now, and so there will need to be more funding so that we're not, in the future, when international students start to come back to Canada, we're not going to be as reliant on them to run our programs. So we have programs where they're subsidized by other programs. You know, our business program was probably subsidized most of the college's other programs that we don't get enough funding for. Like our health science programs are across Canada are very expensive to run, and institutions don't get the full cost of running those programs from the government, and even through student tuition, especially when there's freezes in place or inflation is increasing the cost faster than the 2% tuition increase we can make each year. And then in Ontario, where they freeze and they roll back 10%, and I don't even know how the institutions manage there, and you can completely see why they had to embrace international recruitment. But going forward, something has to change where there's more funding from the government to ensure we don't get caught in a boom and bust cycle. Similar to, I think, the UK, they were doing incredibly well, the best in the world up until 2012, and then they had a huge bust. And then they started coming back, and then they sort of went backwards again and forward, backwards. Like, we can't get into that. We're not the UK. We don't have that, hundreds of years of history of being the place to come and get your education. So if we do that, we'll just completely obliterate any chance of recovery for the Canadian system. So we need that funding from government to ensure that institutions don't have to go above, say, a 20 or 30% international enrollment when the market starts to come back. Something sustainable, so that institutions are still there for Canada, for the domestic students, but also we're welcoming students from other countries to make for a better learning, a more multicultural learning environment on campus, and helping students understand the global realities through making friends from other places and having real life experiences from them of what it's like to live in another country and cultural differences. So I think that's where provincial governments across Canada could align and say, okay, yeah, we're all going to align 30% maximum international enrollment, something sustainable both for the institution, for the community, and for the nation.
Yeah,
And BC has already done that. I'll just state
now,
BC has already done that.
correct me if I'm wrong. When the immigration changes, the big announcement happened.
Yeah.
BC was relatively quick, if I remember, off the ball in terms of saying, okay, we're going to look at this, and here's where we're going to have an answer. We're not going to have an answer. We're going to have a policy. We're going to have a plan within this amount of time. So is it your impression that, and again, that British Columbia from this perspective is maybe a bit ahead of some other provinces in terms of having a real look at what this is and what is required and where maybe there's excesses, and how do we bring that back into a responsible level?
Yeah, I think BC is taking it very serious to see what can the provincial government do to help level the playing field and improve everything for the colleges and public institutions within British Columbia, as well as for international students who choose British Columbia. And my only reference is media, so I don't know, having not lived in other provinces while this is all going on. I only have the media to gauge what's happening. And what I see happening is mostly there's just all blame of IRCC, and that's IRC has to change. We don't. Well, it's got to be some kind of partnership. We all got to work together to find out, okay, where are those pain points and what can we do to improve to make it a little bit easier? Because when you see in the fall a nationwide 22% study permit approval rate for colleges, that's not just IRCC, that's there's a lot of practice involved in that. So we gotta do things a little bit better.
Yeah.
Try and meet them halfway at least. And I think BC is
Mhm.
working on that.
Is there an appetite, do you think, on behalf of the federal government to meet them halfway? Is there an appetite? Have schools, again, I know you can't speak for every school. Let's say an Ontario school says, listen, this is the situation we're in financially. This was the situation we're in financially. Where we were put in this community, let's say a college, for this
Yeah.
reason.
Mhm.
This is how we're keeping these other programs, Um, I think you're right. There has the institutions have to be looking, and I think most are by this
I
point.
hope
They
so.
they
Yeah, I
have
hope
to.
so.
I think they
Yeah.
have to, and we all have to sort of recognize things change. Um, I wonder if there's the appetite at the government level to see, you know, and again, this is I can't know that I'm not in the rooms or anything, but
Mhm.
is there an appetite at the government level to meet them halfway? And then is there a recognition at the institutional level, generally understanding that okay, this we've got to do something, we've got to address this, and this. Um, that's
But
I guess that's my that's the question, and particularly when you're talking about smaller schools or mid-sized schools, some of those things I think become some of those very deliberate actions, short-term pain maybe, become a lot more how would we say impactful immediately. So you gotta ride out the pain. And
well, the pain's going to be there no matter what. So if you change your practices, maybe you can lessen the pain a little. And to answer your question, I don't think currently on the federal side there's any ambition to change and meet the college sector halfway.
there's a lot of other things that they are
Yeah, yeah,
focusing
and
on.
so I think we have to show them that hey, we're willing to meet you halfway. Start by showing them, and then I think we can engage that conversation of where can we work together to improve this situation? Because right now, it's devastating. It's devastating for the college sector. For IRCC, yeah. Other than their reputation, I don't know if it's impacting them so much as it is us. So really, it's going to be up to us because they're not feeling the pain that we are. We're going to have to try and figure out um, how to reach out and improve things for ourselves and show them that we can be good partners. And that was the original intent of the ISP, International Student Program, at the federal level was to be good partners with provinces. So I think we now have to reach. We're going to have to take the high road and make the efforts to be the good partner, to get them at the table to discuss how we can work better together.
Yeah.
It's
So yeah, Camosun's approach emphasizes ethics, transparency, and student fit, as I understand it. How might institutions that have relied, we're coming back to this, trying to look at kind of specific things. How might institutions that have relied more heavily on volume based recruitment adopt similar practices to build resilience and navigate the challenging times? You
yeah,
can't, maybe what I'm saying is you can't maybe do this. Maybe you can do this.
yeah. I think right now everybody's losing people, but our student numbers are declining. So we have people with capacity right now to start to bridge that gap, to use a more student direct recruitment style where you're engaging more directly with students, keeping the line of sight with students. Uh, they could test it in markets. Like, let's try something different in markets where things aren't working. let's every single student will engage with them directly, see how that goes. We'll validate their application before it even comes in, so that we can say, hey, yeah, everything's here, you're ready to go, you've selected a right program, that's a good logical progression from what you've done previously. So they can test it and see how it can work for them and how they can engage more directly with their students and keep that line of sight. And maybe some of my comments might make it say that if you don't use our style, you're not using an ethical recruitment style. I think the intention is for everybody to be ethical regardless of what their style is. There's just some processes that will allow more integrity than others, that you can be proud of, and you can say, hey, this is a really good ethical approach. It's not like any others approaches, it's not like they're ethical or unethical. There's just some approaches that will support that a little bit better, and they can try it.
Well, how do we move forward, right?
Yeah.
Like how do we move forward? We can't. Everyone, your recruitment approach is clearly very good and working for Camosun, but that approach is not going to be the same as, let's say, for the I don't know, pick a school in Saskatchewan, right? Maybe not the same, or Toronto or wherever. I guess, and maybe that's it too. And again, I'm not in those rooms when these decisions were made, but is it? Was there an opportunity? Was there a way for some schools to try something different before the bottom got cut out?
Yeah.
Someone might.
Yeah. Well, I was surprised that when the numbers for all of us, the numbers were insane. What was coming in.
Right.
I'm surprised with that. There was no single institution that said, hey, you know what, we have the resources to pivot how we do things and do things in a different manner,
Yeah.
that will help us bring in a lot more students that want to really engage in their education in our organization. There was a ton of money. There was just so much money, and no one did, because we're education and we do things the way we do things because that's the way it's always been done. So often that's an unfortunate part. We're supposed to be innovative. We're supposed to always be looking to see if we can improve processes, but very often
So is that changing? Is it changing?
I think it has to. I think I don't know. I know at Camosun we're working damn hard to try and lean into improving our processes, working closer with community to support students and just do a better job, because that's part of the reason why we're in, not necessarily Camosun, but the whole country is in a mess, because we didn't do a great job. We got ahead of ourselves, and so now we're moving back and saying, okay, how can we do this a little bit better? Make sure students have all the information they need before they choose Canada. And if they do have all that information, chances are they will choose Canada, because we're an amazing place for a student to come and study if it's the right fit. It's going to be a horrible place if it's like they just think they're coming, they just need a study permit to get permanent residency. If that's all they know and all they think, it's a horrible fit, because it's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Um, I just think about the number of institutions that we have, and I believe education, in all forms. I find it very rare that education doesn't have value in it, but so I believe our schools, we do have good schools, and we do have people who want to deliver good programming, innovative. We've got an amazing entrepreneurial class in Canada, and we have for a very, very long time. And a lot of that class has been built by newcomers to Canada. think so. I understand that there's challenges now. There's tariffs. We talk about tariffs. We talk about new deals with different trade partners. We talk about military spending. NATO pipelines and other things. Um, but the contribution that education can make and does make to the country and certainly to provinces. Do you think that it's undervalued, or it's maybe not perhaps as understood as well as it might be?
It's definitely in the current environment, it's very undervalued. Um, the realities are that Canada is as successful as it is, not because of our natural resources, but because of the people
Exactly.
that live
Yeah.
here and the education they've received and all of those structures that education has helped support, all the technical structures and
Yeah.
the ability just to be innovative and think. So anybody who doesn't think that education has or our institutions have huge value, um, I don't know. I don't know how.
There,
I
there's
can't
no
even
there's
fathom
no
how they
evidence
can't
that
believe
might
that.
gonna help them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 So
Yeah.
yeah, we have amazing programs. We have passionate. You know,
Yeah.
I haven't met people who aren't passionate about what they do at the public institutions. Um, they people are, and they've designed amazing programs.
Yeah.
We just need to ensure that those programs are funded so that um, they can do the good work that they do.
We're still in very bumpy times right now in terms of funding and in terms of in terms of immigration. So Camosun, what would you recommend? Like, what are two, three, four things you can say? Okay, listen, one, two, three, four. Look at this.
Yeah. Um, hmm. Well, I guess people just have to listen to the hard truth. Um, yeah, there's going to be a lot of short-term pain here, and hopefully, it's going to allow us, another 20-year cycle of positive growth and um, international reputation if we go through that. So, working to have better processes to recruit genuine students, definitely one. We'll have to lean in to technology, but I don't mean in the way that many people are like, oh, AI is going to solve this. I mean the technology that gives students access to people that can share the real experience with them and with professionals that will be able to support them along their journey to becoming an applicant and then a student at your institution that's engaged in their learning there and the community, the campus community and the local community. And then leaders are going to have a lot of courage to say, hey, yeah, it's tough, but we need to keep our capacity. This too shall pass, but we need to change our practices. We need to support people to change those practices. There's a financial component to that. That's going to be the really tough thing.
Yeah.
The way we do things to set it up would be expensive. We've always done it this way, so it's efficient. We have a great economy of scale here to keep it efficient. But to change a practice, a recruitment practice, to a new format requires training and so many different things. That's going to take a lot of courage from the presidents and the CFOs to say, hey, we got to do this because this isn't working, so we got to do something that works better.
In light of that, do you see, and not just in this, but we're focused on deliberate reputation, resilience transition in terms of recruiting. Um, do you see in that and maybe other things a changing? changing needs in terms of leadership experience, leadership learning, leadership uh, skills. Maybe these things that are evolving, are changing now. Expectations of leaders are leaders of institutions are higher or are different uh, in some significant ways.
Well, I think there's so many expectations on presidents to fix everything. Um, the reality is they can work with what they have, and they can't do all the work themselves. So they really need the whole organization to engage and to work together to make the changes that are going to improve it for everybody, um, rather than fighting and finger pointing. Um, that's essentially what's happening right now. Everybody's pointing their finger at IRCC. It hasn't helped any of us.
We've
So
been
we
doing
need
that for
to
like 2 years,
move past it. Yes.
right?
Yeah. 2 years. I think
And
it's enough.
and we can complain about it for 2 years. I mean, like there's no question about it. But not only have they not changed it back, they increased,
They're
they
doubling
tightened
down.
the screws
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
in the budget not too long ago.
Yeah. So I think everybody has to get past finger pointing, and blaming, and just say, okay, this isn't working. So what can we do? Where are some of the solutions? Where are some of those first small steps forward that we can make that will improve the situation? Like, if we all have better conversion rates, like, what's the difference if you have a 22% or say a 20% conversion rate and you have 5,000 applicants? So 1,000, you get 1,000 students out of that, and out of that, probably 10% won't they'll defer, or they'll cancel. So what if you have a 50% conversion rate? Well, now you've doubled the number of students, more than doubled. You have a lot more revenue to work with to figure out all the other problems that need to be dealt with. What if you have a 75% conversion rate?
Right.
Well, now, now you're really doing a lot better.
Yeah.
What if you're close to 90? And
It's getting to that point,
yeah,
doing the things I think you need to do, which is not to say people are doing the wrong things. I think it's just more intentional things, right? So you've got to look at the system, the way you're describing it, getting to that place.
yeah,
How long is that going to take? And we could say it's worth it,
yeah,
but it's going to take some time. It's going to
yeah,
take some investing. It's going to take some very difficult decisions. There's only so much money, I think,
yeah,
right now, right? And so we have to. So that's why I get back to sort of leadership and some of the challenges of leadership. And one of the things I ask guests here, I won't ask you to comment on it unless you want to, which is, do we see the leadership of academic institutions um, becoming more of a business, more of a business backed sort of training? When we're talking about, we're talking about dollars, we're talking about a lot of things we would call business practices, right? Marketing, branding. Um, you got to have a good group of people working with you to do that. Um, we get into talking about what education looks like, and that may look very differently at different institutions, right? So there's big decisions that have to be made, and education, I think we would agree, is not as quick to move as some. So when we look at that, we look at the money, we look at the where are we getting the money, the international partnerships, the research partnerships, the relationships, government. Geez, that job of leadership of these schools has
tough
become a
job.
very big job.
It's huge.
It is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Anywhere else in the private sector, they would um, be given a lot more resources and a lot a lot more salary.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a huge job. It's a tough job, and it's a balancing act between, running a business
Yeah.
and um, fulfilling the mandate of helping the community and
Yeah.
young people
Well,
secure
and
a successful future.
the demands on it for a smaller school with less history, maybe not as many resources,
Yeah,
doesn't mean they're not a good school. It's just they don't have the same, right? So
yeah,
yeah. Well, I've I have I've taken a lot of your time and your expertise today, but I wanted to say, Christiaan, thank you very much for sharing your expertise, sharing your time, and as I said, this is the first time, as I said before, this is the first time we've really talked a lot about recruitment, gone in a deep dive in recruitment and what that looks like, and what Camosun's program recruiting program, which is just amazing. Uh, Kudos to you. Kudos to the leadership at the college. Um, so thank you very much for sharing your time and your expertise here. Hopefully, we'll get a chance to talk with you again uh, and revisit some of these things when maybe some other changes happen
yeah, absolutely.
in the coming months. But for those of our viewers, please, if you've got comments, put them in the section below. The comments, Christian's bio, link to the college will be in the comments below. You can find the shorts of this whole interview in short segments on LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram to get your daily dose in little chunks. If you have suggestions for other types of programming you'd like to see, please put them in the comments below. Hit subscribe, like, and Christiaan, thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us today. And for those watching from home, have a lovely day. Thank you.